Welcome to the October 9th, 2012 meeting of the Glendale City Council. May we have a roll call, please?
Council members: Friedman.
Here.
Manukian.
Here.
Najarian.
Here.
Weaver.
Here.
Mayor Quintero.
Here. Tonight we are going to rearrange the business agenda, and our flag salute is going to be led by the Webelos of Den 5, Pack 360, the Verdugo Hills Consul. I'm going to read their names into the record. The flag salute tonight will be led by Nathan Alexander, Mitchell Doom, George Kamar, Jung Kim, Soon Lee, Jack Myers, Nathan Miley, Michael Rue, and Martin Salazar. Will come to the podium and lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
All those in uniform salute. All others hand over heart. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please remain standing for the invocation. On this day, October 9th, in 1930, aviator Laura Ingalls landed in Glendale, California, to complete the first solo transcontinental flight across the United States by a woman. Tonight, we pray for that American pioneer of yesterday, today, and tomorrow. Ingalls had the quintessential American trait of being a pioneer, of being unafraid in the face of great challenges, against insurmountable odds, or in the unknown, especially when it is new and different. We pray that we continue the tradition of our forebears to pioneer new ideas, ways of thinking, or doing things, and always keep our eyes towards the rising sun. We pray our children will learn from us and pioneer themselves to greater heights and accomplishments. We pray that our adventurous spirit never dies. Amen. Thank you.
Okay, I read your name into the record, but why don't you give the public your name and where you go to school? Just there at the mic.
Come on, Nick.
Let's take turns. You start.
Nick.
We also have Mr. Nick Doom, who is a political
He's gonna take a
science
picture.
teacher and a
All right, so you...
political connoisseur.
You can get up here,
in Glendale.
My name is Mitchell Doom, and I go to Dunsmore Elementary School.
All right, Mitchell Doom spoke first.
My name is Sanjuna and I go to Valley View. My name is Nathan Milley and I go to Dunsmore Elementary.
My name is George Kamar and I go to Palmcrest Elementary School.
My name is Martin Salazar, and I go to Dunsmore Elementary.
My name is Michael Ryu and I go to Monte Vista Elementary School.
My name is Nathan and I go to Brainerd.
My name is June Kin and I go to Mountain Avenue Elementary School.
My name is Jack Myers, and I go to Valley View Elementary School, too.
Very good. Thank you.
So
Very
you
good.
involved in
Thank
this
you.
group, Nick?
Thank you very much. You
Just wonder
did
what
that.
Nick was. Are you the Cub Scout leader?
No, our leader is Ron Stickler, who is at soccer practice with his daughter. And our assistant demo leader is Jim Milley, and he is away at work.
All right. Well, thank you very
He
much.
teaches Poli Sci. Up at, where? Clark Magnet?
You all did a very good job. Very good job. All right. Next, Mr. Clerk.
The report of the city clerk is that the agenda for the October 9, 2012 regular meeting of the Glendale City Council was posted on Thursday, October 4th, 2012 on the bulletin board outside City Hall.
All right. What's next?
Next, at 3, under presentation appointments, is 3A agenda preview for the meetings of October 16th, 2012. And if I may, Mr. Mayor and Council, I just would like to make special note that there is also a special public meeting of the Glendale City Council as well that was posted in accordance to the Brown Act.
Right. We'll be doing that shortly. Okay. Next, please.
Agenda preview and the meetings of October 16th, 2012.
Ms. Spears.
Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, for the Glendale Housing Authority for October 16th, we have one business agenda item, and that's Chair's commendation recognizing the work of Habitat for Humanity in Armenia. In the evening for the City Council meeting to commence at 6 p.m., we have a number of consent items. Chief of Police, this is the State of California Office of Traffic Safety Grant Program for Pedestrian Education, Speed and Distracted Driving Enforcement, Motorcycle Enforcement, and DUI Saturation Patrol. Director of Public Works, this is regarding purchase of parking meter replacement parts. Director of Public Works, this is regarding transportation-related grants for the improvement of traffic congestion and safety in the City of Glendale. Director of Public Works, extension of the modern parking contract and increase existing contract amount. Director of Community Services and Parks, proposed operations plan for use of Cedar House at Glendale Heritage Garden to provide youth and family services. We have 2 items under action. City Treasurer, changes to the city's investment policy. Director of Community Development, proposed changes to the GMC 2.76 relating to the Historic Preservation Commission and relating to the Historic Preservation Commission as it relates to GMC 15.20. Under hearings, we have 1 item, Director of Community Development. This is an appeal of parcel map 1628 for property located at 2116 Rimcrest Drive. And that concludes my report, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Next.
At 3B is a proclamation designating October 11th, 2012 as the International Day of the Girl Child in the City of Glendale, as originally established by the United Nations.
Okay, I have a proclamation I'm going to read. Whereas equality and universal access to education for every girl and boy are among the United Nations Millennium Development Goals, supported by 189 countries, including the United States, the United Nations established October 11th as the International Day of the Girl, supported and co-sponsored by the United States and 97 other countries. The International Day of the Girl campaign calls on communities across the globe to recognize that girls worldwide face many injustices such as discrimination, gender stereotypes, child marriage, and lack of education, and empowers girls to fight for their rights. The City of Glendale joins the City of Glendale's Commission on the Status of Women, the League of Women Voters of Glendale Burbank, and other organizations, and supports increasing girls' participation in sports, science, and math-related activities, high school graduation rate, and providing equal opportunities for all girls by speaking out against gender-based injustice. Therefore, I, Frank Quintero, Mayor of the City of Glendale, proclaim October 11th, 2012 as the International Day of the Girl Child in the City of Glendale as originally established by the United Nations. Ms. Friedman.
As I once was a girl. Wonderful to see this proclamation being given. Thank you so much for coming forward to accept it. And if you want to tell us a little bit more about the year of the girl. Thank you. Thanks so much.
Mayor, council member, and staff. Hello, my name is Denise Miller, and I am the chair on the Commission on the Status of Women. On behalf of all of the commissioners, as well as former commissioners such as Elizabeth Manasarian, I would like to take the opportunity to thank you for this proclamation and support of the Day of the Girl Child, recognized annually October 11th by the United Nations. We as a commission support this day and through our work empower girls and young women the freedom to be themselves, to be seen as equals in the eyes of others, and to know that we are equals in our own minds. We are very grateful for this proclamation, and we thank you for the acknowledgement.
Thank you. Thank you. Next, please.
Next is City Council and staff comments.
Mr. Weaver.
Yes, following the vote a couple weeks ago on the smoking ordinance, I received a considerable number of emails asking what the heck did the council do. In the meantime, I had planned on it, and I started doing more research. I know when we developed this back in 2008, we didn't spend much time discussing the separation of 10 feet between smoking and non-smoking. All the studies I looked at, from Canada to New York City to Massachusetts, whatever, they're talking about at least 25-foot separation. And so I would like to request that staff, if I can get a second, study this, look at, there's countless reports on this matter, and to bring it back within a month or two to ask. Shouldn't be that much work, because all it is getting the internet and looking it all up. But I found nothing that supported 10-foot, except the Berkeley report. And that was even maybe flawed in a way.
I'll second it.
All right, I agree. Okay, anything else?
Yeah.
No, that'll do it.
Ms. Friedman?
Well, if Mr. Weaver and I weren't on the same wavelength last week, we are today. Because I also got several emails, and most of them, I'd say almost all of them, their big issue was about that separation. Not about people being able to smoke somewhere over there, but they wanted it to really be over there. I definitely think that with the larger spaces, that a bigger separation would be necessary. So I have it written right in my notes to ask the same thing, so I'm glad that we'll be doing that. So I just wanted to mention some events. It was the usual very busy week in Glendale. First, you may have seen in the Glendale News Press coverage of the International Walk to School Day. It was my pleasure to join a group of kids and parents as they did a walking school bus from a distance of about, I'd say, 10 blocks away from their school, which was Thomas Jefferson Elementary, and walking with them to school. And they had so much fun. Some of them do this every day. They walk with a small group, so that they're all together and safe, and parents rotate taking them. Some of them, it was their first time doing this, and they were very, very excited. And we went, and as we were walking, other groups of kids were also sort of merging on the school, and it was just great to see this expanding all over Glendale, in fact, all over the country. But it's great to see it expanding here in Glendale, because the more kids are walking to school, of course, the healthier they're all going to be. And we know that the lack of physical activity is one of the big contributing causes to obesity amongst children in this country. But also, the more children that are walking, the less cars are crowded around the schools, which are in areas that were never meant for that kind of car traffic, which means that it's safer for the kids because there's just less traffic out there. When there's more kids around, the cars are more likely to see the kids and know that there are going to be kids out there. So I want to thank all of the parents, all of the teachers and principals and organizers, the PTA who was very involved in this, and everyone who made this possible. It's just great. And that school is also doing a bike bus in the next couple weeks, so I hope to join them as they bike to school. The Associates at Brand Library had their annual Works on Paper show, and you may be wondering, where are they doing that since the Brand Library is currently closed for renovations? The show is at the Burbank Center for the Arts, and thank you, Burbank, for taking in our Wayward Brand Library exhibit. It's at 1100 West Clark Avenue in Burbank, and it's a wonderful, wonderful exhibit. It's a beautiful space, for one thing, but the exhibit is just top-notch, and there's a whole range of different types of works on paper, as well as pottery for sale. So I recommend that if you're an art lover, you go and see the exhibit. Last week also was, of course, Oktoberfest in Montrose, which benefits the CV Valley Chamber of Commerce. It was a very family-friendly event this year, a lot of fun. They had a very large midway with lots of rides. They had, of course, beer and brats, and everyone seemed to be having a great time. I attended, along with some of my colleagues, Glendale Memorial's annual fundraiser. It was very well attended. I think that they raised a lot of money. I hope that they made their goal of what they were looking to raise for their health care that they provide for the community. They're a wonderful hospital, and we're very lucky to have them here. I went on the MONA, which is the Museum of Neon Art, hopefully soon to be here in Glendale. They had a special bus tour of neon that started here in Glendale. It was sold out. It's been sold out for weeks, and it was so much fun. They do their bus tours, I think, every week. Jay, do you know? Is it every week, every month? Seasonal. Okay, they do seasonal bus tours. You can look at their website if you're interested. And they are really, really fun. They show you neon all around this area, but they also show you lots of kind of local sites like Tommy's Burgers and, things that are kind of the fun things to see around Los Angeles and around Glendale. So it was really fun to be with a group of mostly Glendale citizens on the tour. And lastly, last night, along with our city clerk, and I think Mr. Manukian was also there, we saw a wonderful movie called Brooklyn Castle, which is a documentary that follows a group of children, inner city kids from Brooklyn, from, I think it's 2009 to 2011. And this is a really very low-income inner-city school in Brooklyn. And this school happens to have the top chess team, elementary school chess team in the entire country. And they bring something like 200 kids every year to these various tournaments. And really what the movie is about is the importance of extracurricular activities to school kids and what it teaches them in terms of abstract thinking and keeping them engaged, and how motivated these kids, who would really be considered at-risk youth, a lot of them, how motivated they were through their involvement in chess to go on to college, to get better jobs, to have great lives, and how it really taught them to think critically and gave them incredible maturity. And in this time, where schools are facing so many budget cuts, extracurriculars tend to be the things that go first. And this movie is a really very compelling argument about why that shouldn't be the case. I highly recommend it. It's really one of these movies that by the end you just want to stand up and cheer for this incredible kids. So I'm giving it a plug. It's opening in the Lemley, I believe, in Pasadena, as well as other locations around Los Angeles towards the end of the month. I want to say the 21st. Do you remember, Artie?
19th.
The 19th.
They'll be in theaters.
And I think they have a special screening on the 18th that you can buy tickets for, and they have a website, and they have a Facebook page. It's called Brooklyn Castle. And they really want people to go to the special screening the day before, for sort of box office reporting reasons. But it was really just a great time, so I hope if you have an interest, PTA people, whoever, go and see this movie. You won't be sorry. Thanks so much, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to take this opportunity to congratulate. I was at a wedding over the weekend. I would like to congratulate management services staff, Christine Babumyan and Martin Power's wedding over the weekend. Saturday, it was in Palm Springs. We attended with our family. It was a wonderful event. I would like to wish them health, happiness. Health is the most important thing, of course, and success in their life together. So it was a happy occasion. I was also out riding my bike this weekend in the mountains, and I took my first spill. I was okay. I got up, dusted myself up, and got back on the bike again. And the reason why I'm bringing that up is because Glendale is supposed to have their mountain bike units, and apparently the city attorney's office is holding it up. I would like to inquire. City attorney's office.
We'll look into
I think Jess is turning red over there. I don't know when this is going to happen, but winter's almost upon us, and if we can get this program up and running, if we're going to get it up and running, let's do it. If not, let's say we're not, so that we can kind of move forward.
We'll find out.
Okay.
We'll find out what the delay is.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, before you go, Mr. Jarian, I'm going to go next and follow up on every week I hear from Mr. Manukian his mountain bike exploits, so I want to talk about Cycle Via. In the city of L.A., I got my BMX bicycle and started doing this weekend, that's right, did a bunch of ramp jumps.
You did?
That's right. I challenged some of them. Just kidding. Just kidding. I did take my bike to Spring Street and rode all over. I had an office on 5th and Spring for 20-plus years. But I was thinking about you the whole time. While it was a very civilized affair, I couldn't help but think, I'm going to tell Rafi I was doing ramps and competing with the skateboarders. It was great. It's been going on for a number of years. It just keeps getting bigger and bigger. Not only people riding bikes through downtown Los Angeles to Figueroa to the east side, but lots of folks just strolling down the streets of downtown Los Angeles, and it's just a kind of surreal feeling when you are going down these wide avenues without any cars or trucks or buses, but very successful. Maybe someday we'll be able to bring it to Glendale, or bring that concept to Glendale. And then the second event was Glendale Memorial's annual fundraiser, which was very well attended, very well done, and they do normally raise quite a bit of money, so I think they were quite successful. Mr. Najarian.
Thank you. A few items. With regard to the smoking ordinance, I have been misspeaking about the study that I referred to last week and that I had referred to previously. This is a study by Stanford University, Dr. Wayne Ott. And if staff would please pull that up, it does indicate several distances, anywhere from 6 feet to 20 feet, depending on the number of cigarettes being smoken, as well as the directness of the downwind position of those non-smokers. So let's pull that up. This was not a number that we pulled out of thin air when we developed this, and let's review that and perhaps make some adjustments if necessary to our ordinance. The next thing is I'd like to show everyone this wonderful little handbook. This handbook is the MTA's 2013 Call for Projects. Call for Projects is the manner in which the MTA administers the distribution of funds to individual cities for various types of projects, including, and I think I spoke about this last month when we were talking about the bikeway. There are goods movement improvements, regional surface transportation improvements, signal synchronization, transportation demand management, bicycle improvements, pedestrian improvements, and transit capital. Mr. Zern knows this book. His staff is well aware, but this is the book, and these are the procedures by which $200 million are going to be distributed to the various cities. It's a huge amount of money, and I would like staff to be as creative as possible, especially in the bike arena and the bike category, because we've certainly developed our bike plan. And if members of the Walk Bike Glendale would like to give some input, I'm inviting you to contact Mr. Zern, and perhaps through the auspices of our Transportation and Parking Commission. These applications are due fairly soon. There's a workshop tomorrow for staffers, so it's a excellent opportunity to get funding in many different categories, and hopefully we can hit another home run like we have in the past few years. I'm going to hand this to you, and you can use it as a doorstop. I know this is hot off the presses. The other bit of good news I have is as I was speaking to representatives of Metrolink and MTA and the high-speed rail, it appears as though the often discussed Doran Street crossing may have a solution, and we may have a grade separation there, which will solve much of the safety issues that we have. This will be it hasn't been designed yet, but there's up to $40 million available to solve that issue, as well as the issue at Broadway and Brazil to separate the interface between the locomotives, Amtrak, Metrolink, and the cars and trucks which try and get into that area. So there's good news on the front there. Maybe staff has heard about that and was aware of some sort of resolution which was forthcoming, but it is again, it's a testament to bi-city cooperation, us and LA, as well as tri-agency, the MTA, Metrolink, as well as the Amtrak, which is administered by the Low Sand Corridor Board. So good news, and hopefully that will lead to the long sought-after quiet zone for the entire region of Pelanconi and the San Fernando corridor. So they can focus on being creative in our creative corridor. And thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, any staff comments? I hear none. Mr. Kasakian.
We want to make an announcement about things being taken off, or the special meeting announcement? No? We'll do that? All right. Then in that case, Mr. Mayor and Council.
All right.
Next item on 5 is the consent items, including minutes following our routine and may be acted upon by one motion. Any member of council or the audience requesting separate consideration may do so by making such request before motion is proposed. I would like to also mention that on 5D, we do have a minor change, whereas we are swapping the term city clerk to advertise for bids with the general manager of Glendale Water and Power.
Okay, I have a card on 5B, so we'll pull 5B.
And can we pull one of the recycled water ones as well? Because I have a question regarding it. Let's say D, as in David.
Okay, we'll pull 5B and 5D.
I'll move the remainder of the consent calendar.
Second.
Second.
Roll call.
Council members: Friedman,
Yes.
Menuchyan,
Yes.
Najarian,
Yes.
Weaver,
Aye.
Quintero.
Yes. Read 5B into the record.
5B is Director of Public Works regarding approval of the final map of tract number 71552 for a 4-unit new condominium subdivision located at 1315 Stanley Avenue, subdivider Stanley Funding LLC. B1 is a resolution approving the final map of tract number 71552.
Mr. Mayor, I have a conflict on this item, so I will be recusing myself and will not take part of any consideration on it.
All right. I have one speaker card, Herbert Milano.
Mayor Quintero, members of the City Council and staff, my name is Herbert Milano. Whenever there is a new project, especially a new condominium conversion or a new tract map for a subdivision, most people are unaware that there is usually an impact, especially if it is a matter of replacing a single-family home for a multifamily. This particular 4-unit is not going to impact the city significantly. It's in South Glendale. But whenever we have these presentations made before the public, one by one, week after week, we don't get a sense of the overall impact of the cumulative effect of all of these condominium and new apartment conversions in the south part of the city. It is my contention that during the past couple of years, we have had thousands of new units coming, or either being completed or coming to the city of Glendale, having a significant impact on the shortage of parkland, having a significant impact on traffic and congestion, to say nothing of the quality of life, to say nothing of no measures with regard to what is the expected electricity usage, what is the expected water usage per unit, or any of these kinds of measures that are relevant to us. The rest of the population are being requested or demanded that we reduce our water consumption, that we reduce electricity consumption. And yet in the last couple of years, this City Council has approved thousands of units, is my contention, that are impacting overall the usage of electricity and water across the city. So while we're being asked to conserve, you increase significantly the number of units out there. But what concerns me most is that we do not have like a year-to-date summary of what is being built and what is being proposed or approved. And I think it behooves us to have a full picture of what is coming up with this unit and any other units in areas where are significantly deficient of parkland. This unit is coming in Recreational Planning Area 10 that has 0.02 acres per 1,000 individuals, an area that has not had a single square inch of parkland for 32,000 people, and yet these topics do not come up for a full evaluation. And it is my hope that the city, as you come up with these particular approvals, that you give the public an overall view as to where we stand with regard to the additional congestion and the additional units that are coming up. Thanks.
Have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Council members: Friedman,
Yes.
Menuchyan,
Yes.
Najarian, Weaver,
Aye.
Mayor Quintero.
Yes. The other pulled item, 5D, I believe.
5D is General Manager of Glendale Water and Power regarding proposed extension of the Glendale recycled water pipeline to provide recycled water to the City of Los Angeles Betty Davis Park. At D1 is a motion authorizing execution of an agreement with Los Angeles Department of Water and Power for the proposed pipeline extension. And at D2, the revised resolution reads, a resolution adopting request for a proposal for the design and construction of proposed pipeline extension and directing the General Manager of Glendale Water and Power to advertise for a proposal.
These are two items that deal with recycled water. One is the extension, and E, of course, is additional connections. Will these connections benefit the city of Glendale in any way in our capacity to deliver reclaimed or recycled water, or is it just LA? And if it's LA, why is it coming to Glendale to deal with the LA side?
Mr. Menuchyan, as you're aware, the City of LA and the City of Glendale own jointly the Los Angeles Glendale Water Reclamation Plant, the wastewater treatment facility which produces recycled water. Over the years, we've jointly built pipelines to convey that water to both the cities. In this particular case, the City of Los Angeles approached this as they want to bring recycled water to Betty Davis Park. The easiest way to do that is for us to extend our pipeline to the city border and then let them connect to that. They're willing to pay the entire cost of that, plus a one-time fee to us for the capacity usage. So this doesn't impact our ability to deliver water to our residents because we've jointly built the pipeline. And also the nature of the agreement is anytime one of the cities wants to add additional connections, they need approval from both cities in order to do that. So they have the opportunity in LA at this time to expand their recycled water system, and hopefully someday I see us being able to do the same.
So this doesn't increase our capacity in any way?
No.
Extending?
No, this is just extending the existing capacity, the existing pipeline and the existing capacity. We have in the past jointly funded a capacity upgrade of the pipe. And I would imagine in the future, as we expand our system, we would do that again.
I was hoping that this would somehow increase our capacity to a certain degree.
We'll have that opportunity in the future as need be.
Okay, very good. I'll move the item.
Okay.
Roll call.
Yes.
Menuchyan?
Yes.
Najarian?
Yes.
Weaver?
Aye.
Mayor Quintero.
Yes. Next, please.
Next item is oral communications, and this is a 3-minute portion of oral communications reserved for community announcements. We will revisit oral communications for the full 5-minute portion at the conclusion of all city business.
Leon Mayer, followed by Sharon Wiseman.
Good evening, Mayor Quintero, members of the council and staff. My name is Leon Mayer. I'm here on behalf of the Friends of the Library and the library itself. And here's a heads up for Thursday. This Thursday at 7 o'clock at the Glendale Central Library. We're going to have a program, a book signing featuring Levon Parian. Now, Levon's grandfather, also Levon Yoknak Parian. I got that right the second time?
7 brothers.
Pardon?
It means 7 brothers. So.
I understand. Well, his grandfather, Yoknak, joined the Ottoman army in 1909. And sometime after he joined the Ottoman army, the genocide began, and he escaped and deserted the army, and then came back, and like Lawrence of Arabia, he rescued hundreds, if not thousands, of orphans and survivors in the desert. And this is a story, a book, with photographs from the British archives and things like that. And it's a great book, and Crows of the Desert is the name of the book. And Levon Parian will be there. He'll show some pictures. He'll tell you about it. And it'll be a great evening for people interested in that event. Now, we're getting ahead of ourselves in the sense that our next event is November 7th. That's the day after the election. And we purposely deferred this program till after the election so we wouldn't get involved in any pre-election controversy. At the library on November 7th, we will have Dr. Peter Dreyer, professor from Occidental College, and he will talk about his book, The 100 Greatest Americans of the 20th Century, a Social Justice Hall of Fame. And this is a book which we're going to publicize with high schools and other people in Glendale. And it's a great book featuring people who contributed to the 20th century events that led to such things as women's suffrage and working conditions, things of that nature. And it'll be very interesting, and Dr. Dreyer is an authority in the field of professor of politics, urban policy, government official, journalist, and an advocate for reform, and he's a Pasadena resident. So we'll tell you more about that November 7th, and I have flyers. For those who I haven't given them to yet, flag me down as I leave. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Sharon Wiseman, followed by Mona Montgomery.
Mayor Quintero and council members and staff, I'm Sharon Weissman from Far North Glendale, and I'm here this evening on behalf of the League of Women Voters Glendale Burbank to invite everyone to a candidate forum for the 28th Congressional District, which is currently the 29th Congressional District, and the forum will be Monday, October 15th at the Burbank City Council Chambers starting at 7 p.m. The address there is 275 East Olive Avenue in Burbank, and the League is currently soliciting questions from the public for the candidates. Questions for the candidates can be submitted via telephone, 818-925-4598, or via the website, which is www.lwvglendaleburbank.org. And the forum is open to the public, and written questions can be submitted on the night of the forum. The candidates forum will be broadcast live from the Burbank City Council chambers, and then subsequently available, I believe, on their website. I don't know if it'll be on Glendale's city website also, but there will be streaming video. And for those of you who are not aware, Adam Schiff is the current incumbent. As I said, it's currently District 29, and because of redistricting, it'll be 28 come next year. And the challenger is Phil Jennerjohn. So please, if you'd like to be more informed of the two candidates that will represent our area in Washington, D.C., please come. And please consider joining the League of Women Voters. You don't have to be a woman to join. And it's always good to be better informed to keep our democracy living and vivid. Thank you.
Thank you. Mona Montgomery.
Good evening, council members. My name is Mona Montgomery, and I'm here tonight to announce the Vanguardians have changed their meeting time to today, Tuesday. It is now every Tuesday open to the public at 8 a.m. in the morning until 9 a.m. We meet at 300 West Glen Oaks Boulevard on the third floor. And today, for example, our intrepid leader read tonight's agenda to us. And the idea is to get people who are interested in becoming more involved in politics to become more aware of what's going on locally. So we read the agenda, we discuss different positions. Some of our members are very intellectual and advanced, and it's a great honor to be able to share time with them. Most of us pretty much just listen, like myself, but if after you come a couple of meetings, you get a press pass like this, and that entitles you or me, the holder of the press pass, to get into closer communications with the press, which I'm learning to communicate with the news press, and also to actually go places where news is happening with your little webcam and become an actual a member of the press, which allows you to get into some of these events. For example, when the riots were happening down near Disneyland, a lot of the people like me, I wasn't there, but a lot of this new type of journalist goes down with their webcams and they take it, and within seconds, sometimes live, it's right there on YouTube being broadcast worldwide. It's very, very exciting. So we're looking for new members. Anyone who's interested, please come next Tuesday morning at 8 a.m. Again, Robert Hall Building, 300 West Glen Oaks, in the third floor. Thank you very much.
You also have a website, don't you, Ms. Montgomery, that people should see?
Thank you very much. Thank you for reminding me. Yes, we do have a website, and it's called Vanguardians.
No, your website. Don't you have your own?
And my personal website, of course, I'm thrilled if you come to my website, is monamontgomery.com. Thank you.
Okay, that's it for the Public service, oral communications portion. What's next?
Under adoption of ordinances at 7A is an ordinance establishing the North Cumberland Heights Historic District introduced by Councilmember Weaver on October 2nd, 2012.
Move 7A.
Second.
Roll call.
Councilmembers Friedman,
Yes.
Menuchyan,
Yes.
Najarian,
Yes.
Weaver,
Aye.
Mayor Quintero.
Yes. Next, please.
7B is an ordinance amending Chapter 13.16 of the Glendale Municipal Code relating to water service connection. This was introduced also by Councilmember Weaver on October 2nd, 2012.
Move 7B.
Second.
Roll call.
Councilmembers Freeman,
Yes.
Menuchyan, Menuchyan?
No.
Oh, all right. Najarian,
Yes.
Weaver,
Aye.
Mayor Quintero.
Yes.
I apologize, Councilmember Menuchyan, if you had mentioned your vote and I did not hear it. Under action items, 8A is Director of Community Services and Parks regarding landscape maintenance of fire and general government facilities in connection with specification number 3331. 8A1 is a resolution dispensing with the competitive bidding and authorizing execution of an amendment to the existing contract with Parkwood Landscape Maintenance, Inc., extending the contract to June 30, 2013 for the additional amount of $146,736 plus $22,000 contingency for a total not to exceed contract amount of $1,635,580.47.
Mr. Ochoa?
Yes, sir. This is an interesting item in that I believe it to be a harbinger of things to come with respect to staffing levels and services that are provided. As the council well knows, we have cut the full-time employee population from 1,832 in the last fiscal year to, I believe, with the other agenda item that we have tonight, will be less than 1,600. And we have not been that low for quite some time. Considering that we have been through the worst economy in a century since the Great Depression, we can't really expect to bounce back anytime too soon. And even if we were to bounce back economically, the question before the council as a matter of policy is, would we rebuild the organization in the same way? And thus this item is before you. We do and have contracted out for services in the past. What this represents is the augmentation of that effort. What you'll see going forward into the next year is this discussion of contracting out versus in-house staff and the managed competition process that takes effect as we request proposals for various items. So with the specifics on this particular contract, I'll have our Park Services Manager, Mr. Coco Panosian, come up to give you the brief presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Ochoa. Good evening, Mayor Quintero, members of City Council. If the Mayor would allow me, we prepared a brief PowerPoint presentation to highlight some of the major points of the argument we're trying to make in this report for our viewing members, residents at home. And if the Mayor would allow me, I can go directly to the PowerPoint and go through some of the... Oh, great. We figured it's best to start off with giving you a little bit of background with the Parkwood Landscape Contract Specification 3331. It dates back to May 13, 2008, when Council authorized solicitation for bids for that specification, requiring us to bring bids for the specific services for landscape maintenance of general government facilities. We had 7 firms attend the pre-bid mandatory meeting, which was held on June 4th, and only 2 responded to our proposal, which was Parkwood Landscape Maintenance and Mariposa Horticultural Services. Both of these vendors, organizations we had working relationships with. And as we start reviewing the proposals carefully, along with the City Attorney's Office, we identified that both of them were non-responsive. There were areas that they had missed putting in bid amounts, and to be able to evaluate the overall concept and bid, we brought a report to Council. We asked for you to dispense, reject all the bids received, and allow us to negotiate directly with Parkwood, which was at that time the lower bidder. Now, the original bid was $1.27 million, and we did not have sufficient funds to cover for that. And with your direction in negotiating, we were able to negotiate a three-year contract for $910,000 and $560. As the slide will show, the original contract was for 3 years. Effective date was April 16, 2009, and it would have seen us through April 15, 2012. The original contract allocation would have been, as I mentioned, $910,560, and we had asked for a contingency of $136,584. The original contract total amount was $1,047,000 and some change. On December 20th of last year, we came to council, asked for an extension of that existing contract. We asked approval to extend it for 8.5 months, and based on that, it would have taken us from April 16, 2012 to the end of December of this year, 2012. Council did approve our request, and the total contract term now became 3 years and 8.5 months. Along with that, we asked for an increased allocation of $293,000 plus $125,000 in contingency. The overall increased amount was $419,000 with that first amendment, which brought our contract total allocation of $1.46 million. What we have in front of you currently is a request to give us an opportunity to extend an additional 6 months. The 6 months extension, if approved, would get us through the end of fiscal year, June 1st, 2013 through June 30th, 2013. With the approval, the contract total would be, total years of the term of the contract would be 4 years and 2.5 months. Again, with the increase in allocation, we're requesting of $146,000 plus $22,000 in contingency, which is approximately 15%. This current increase for the second amendment is $168,736. Overall contract, if approved with this extension, we will be at $1.635 million. Now, if we average out over the 4 years and 2.5 months, which is 4 years and 1/4 of a year, we're looking at an annual cost, including all the contingency, all the emergency work that we've conducted, all the landscaping work we've done, additional to the original scope of work, we're looking at $388,000 annual maintenance cost. To distinguish between the two, whether what Park Services does and what the contractor does, mostly the contractor is responsible for city medians and non-park city landscaped areas, including the transportation center, some parking lots, and the Montrose Shopping Park. Most currently, Doran Gardens, as we opened it up, is also falling under the contractor's area of maintenance. Whereas Park Services staff, we maintain all of the park and recreation facilities, community centers, including mini parks, ball fields, sport fields, and we have certain medians that have always traditionally been under our wing for maintenance. Now, going forward, the benefit of extending this contract for additional 6 years, the first benefit we look at is we are going to maintain the current contract cost for an additional 6 months. And meanwhile, it's going to give us additional time to analyze and identify potential opportunities to co-source. Take some areas and pass it on to the contractor, where we look at taking on for ourselves. We're going to evaluate it further to see the feasibility of conducting irrigation work inclusive, whether we pass it on to the contractor or whether we look at doing it in-house, what would be the best option for the city. And at the same time, one of the benefits will be that we will now start coinciding with the beginning of the fiscal year, where we start coming to council annually during the budget cycle. We don't have to worry about a mid-year change in that contract term. We'll start July 1st, and every 3 years or so, we'll go back to July 1st, coinciding with the fiscal year. And for the next steps, we are currently working on a new proposal to go out for another 3-year contract bid. We were looking at bringing that forward to council for approval to go off the bid in January of 2013. And obviously, once we get the bids, come back to council and execute a contract with the commencement date being July 1st of 2013. That, in short, is a brief presentation on the report in front of you, and we'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions? I have one speaker card, Herbert Milano.
Mayor Quintero, members of the City Council, my name is Herbert Milano. Every time I see a contract where there are very few bidders, it sort of raises my eyebrows for several reasons. The past 4 years have been pretty hard on a lot of companies, meaning a downturn in the economy, which would imagine that these companies will be more should we say, compliant and flexible in coming to an agreement with the city and will be eager to get additional contracts. I had looked carefully, not at this contract, but at prior contract with regard to the development of the adult recreation center, and noticed the significant narrow time for many of these contractors to bid properly. And I also noticed that many of them were not, should we say, were, as you term it here, non-responsive, some because they didn't have the signature of, let's say, a CEO or an executive. They had a signature of a general manager. They seem to me, from my inexperienced eyes, that they could have easily come back to the contractor and says, by the way, no, we need the signature is from the CEO of your company, not from the general manager, for example. They did not seem to be that significant or material. And so I began to think about how do you assist potential bidders to ensure that they turn in a fully compliant contract. Why not create on a twice-a-year basis a process by which they are taught and say, here is how a compliant contract is done. Here is what we look for. Here are the pitfalls. And so my objective is to highlight that the process needs revision, and it is my hope that in contracts such as this, that we get some type of additional review. Furthermore, I want to ask the following question. Has there ever been contracts where the contingency fee is not used? It just appears to me that whenever there's a contingency, there is an incentive for the contractor to use up the contingency that is available. Third question has to do with the fire department. If I recall, several years ago, maybe 12 or more years ago, the fire department used to maintain their own landscaping. And I was wondering, they are the ones who basically did not have any budget cuts. So I was wondering if that perhaps is not an option for the city to look into. Thank you.
Okay. Any questions for the staff?
Move 8A1.
Second.
Second.
Roll call.
Council members: Friedman,
Yes.
Manukian,
Yes.
Jarian,
Yes.
Weaver,
Aye.
Mayor Quintero.
Yes. We had an organization that should have spoken at the first part of oral communications. They didn't quite understand how the process works, and so I want to invite them back up, even though they've been waiting for a while, and I apologize. Dr. Stella Bagdasarian, and she's here on behalf of the Armenian Bone Marrow Project. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Sorry for the confusion. Good morning, Mr. Quintero, honorable council members. My name is Dr. Stella Bagdasarian, and I'm the chair of the Armenian Bone Marrow Donor Registry Walk of 2012. Thank you for giving us this opportunity to speak to you all for a few minutes regarding a topic that affects all of us at some point in our lives, cancer. Unfortunately, I can say with great certainty that almost everyone in this room has had an acquaintance or a loved one who had been affected by cancer at one point in their lives. The type of cancer that our organization deals with is leukemia or the blood cancer. Each year, more than 30,000 patients are diagnosed with leukemia, aplastic anemia, or other life-threatening blood diseases. For many, their only chance of survival is to have a stem cell bone marrow transplant from a compatible donor. Only 30% of the patients can find a match within their own family. The other 70% have to find their matches among unrelated existing registers. For many minority groups such as Hispanics, Armenians, Jews, this percentage is higher because there are less minority donors registered in marrow donor registries. To address this problem, nearly 10 years ago, in 2001, we established the Armenian Bone Marrow Donor Registry, a non-profit independent organization. The mission of our organization is to find that compatible match donor for all patients, Armenians and non-Armenians, who are suffering from the blood-related diseases, and their last hope of survival is to have a bone marrow or stem cell transplant from a genetically matched compatible donor. Since that time, the ABMDR has recruited over 22,000 donors, received and processed over 1,500 patients' referrals, identified 1,200 potential matches, and facilitated 16 bone marrow stem cell transplants in Armenia, United States, and Europe. We're a full member of World Marrow Donor Worldwide and a compatible member of the American National Donors Registry. I have to cut this short. So our 7th annual walkathon for Walk of Life is October 20th, and Dr. Ashjan is going to give you a little detail on that.
Hello.
Thank you.
As mentioned, the walkathon will be held on October 20th. It's a Saturday. Registration will begin at 7:30 to 8:30. It will be held at the Glendale Memorial Hospital and Health Center, located 222 Eulalie Street in Glendale off of Brand. The walk will begin at 9 o'clock. We'll be walking up north on Central Avenue to Lexington, at which point we'll be greeted by the consulate at the Republic of Armenia, and then we'll head east on Lexington and back down Central, back to Glendale Memorial Hospital. We invite all council members, families, and of course the City of Glendale to join us for this walk. If you want to register, you can visit our website at www.abmdr.am to register, and if you are unable to walk, you can register as a virtual walker. Thank you for your time.
Okay, and sorry to keep you waiting. And you can also come back next week, do the presentation again, obviously at the beginning of the meeting.
Okay, thank you very much for your time.
Okay, let's now move to what has to be called a special meeting.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I suggest you recess the regular meeting and call the special meeting to order.
All right, so I will recess the regular meeting of October 9th, and do we call we ask for a roll call?
Correct.
And have a roll call for the special meeting of October 9th. Roll call, Mr. Kasakian.
Council members: Friedman.
Here.
Manukian. Here. Najarian.
Here.
Weaver.
Here.
Mayor Quintero.
Here. Read your report.
The agenda for the October 9, 2012 special public meeting of the Glendale City Council was posted on Monday, October 8, 2012 at 3:15 p.m. on the bulletin board outside City Hall. The item before you today is Director of Human Resources regarding authorization of paid leave for salaried employees to be laid off and separated effective November 15, 2012 as a result of necessary budget reductions. 1A is a motion authorizing paid leave through November 15, 2012.
All right, Mr. Ochoa.
Yes, sir. We are on the closing stretch in terms of the budget balancing steps that were begun in May and June. Had anticipated the need to create savings in GWP with the adoption of this year's budget, and we are pursuing that now, both through the retirement incentive, trying to entice those folks who are close to retirement to actually fulfill their career and move on at this point, and then at this juncture, look at more than 24 layoffs within the department, again, as steps towards creating that savings that we need for the current fiscal year. If you have any specific questions about this effort, Mr. Doyle can answer those for you.
Mr. Doyle.
Okay. Mr. Mayor, members of council, this item is a request to authorize paid leave for salaried employees affected by this latest round of layoffs. Earlier this year, in an effort to address the projected shortfall in the general fund budget, the city put forth a series of budgetary reductions designed to reduce salaried budget staff. And as Mr. Ochoa said, this involved both the retirement incentive as well as actual layoff of employees. As you know, we still have significant budgetary issues, this time with a focus on GWP. In order to address the projected $10.8 million deficit, the city is effectuating the same retirement incentive as was previously offered to eligible employees, and also additional layoffs. The layoff notices are to be served tomorrow. We've targeted October 10th as the date to serve these notices and have the employees vacate their positions as of tomorrow. However, there are a significant number of actions that need to be resolved before the actual date of separation. As an example, we need to work through various bumping scenarios that need to be worked out. Additionally, we need to analyze the effects of the retirement incentive. If there are a lot of retirement incentives, we may be able to scale back on some of the layoffs. Additionally, we need to process employees into other departments. This particular layoff is primarily targeted at Glendale Water and Power. However, many of the employees involved have bumping rights to other city departments, and we need time to get them settled and transition to those departments. Most importantly, however, we need appropriate amount of time to meet our obligation to meet and confer with our respective employee associations over the effects of these layoffs. And what we're seeking again is an additional, approximately an additional month from the actual date of that the layoff notices will be given. The employees will be sent home, or the affected employees will be sent home tomorrow. But we're seeking the paid leave through November the 15th of 2012. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to try and answer them for you. Thank you.
Questions? Okay.
I'll move item 1.
I have a speaker card, Mike Mohill.
Good evening, Mayor Quintero, council members, fellow Glendalians. Artie, would you please show my PowerPoint? PowerPoint shows that, for the screen, please.
On there.
My time. In Greece right now, on October the 7th, Sunday, Greece public versus the public sector. With a 24% private jobless rate, civil servants' secure positions stir resentment. They have a crisis in Greece right now. Here we are in Glendale. We're laying people off and giving them severance pay. My question is why? They have generous salaries and pensions already. Why do we need to give them severance pay? We just give them the notice. We can't afford you anymore. People are living on Social Security. People have lost their jobs. Working families are struggling. Businesses are struggling. Stores are closing. The world is coming to an end. No. But this is Glendale. Why can't we be prudent? We hire you people, council members, to watch out for us first, the public, not the city employees. You work for us first. Please, let me remind you that. I know you've all received generous pensions and, generous endorsements, okay, and campaign contributions from the unions, but you still work for us, the public. Unemployment in this area is 11% officially, but if you include the 5 to 7% of people who have given up, who are off the rolls, they're working part-time, not because they want to, because they have to. And here we are giving away more money to the city employees. You've increased our trash fees. You've increased our water, our electric rates. You transfer money from the GWP through the general fund to pay for more salaries and pensions. Why don't you think of the public? I speak for the public tonight because everybody else is home right now trying to go to school, go to work tomorrow morning, and we count on you to work for us. Instead, all you care about is, I'm sorry, to make sure that the city employees have a nice soft landing when they leave our city. They're going to be getting a generous pension. Some of them will be getting 90% of last year's salary. Some will be getting 75% of their last year's salary. And some will be getting 60% of their last year's salary. Ladies and gentlemen, look at that picture up there. Greece, public versus public sector. 24% of the private sector is hurting there. And they're going to have a riot. Thank you. My name is Mike Mohill.
Okay.
Well, I moved 1. I don't know what that had to do with what we're voting on here, but I moved 1 again.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Roll call.
Council members Friedman,
Yes.
Manukian,
Yes.
Jarian,
Yes.
Weaver,
Aye.
Mayor Quintero.
Yes. Next, please.
No, nothing else on this special
Move to
meeting.
adjourn.
Oh, that's right.
Second?
All right.
The special meeting.
Special meeting is adjourned. I will call the session and reconvene the regular meeting of the Glendale City Council.
And Mr. Mayor, you should take item 8B off calendar, because the special meeting was intended to replace that item.
All right, so we'll have AB taken off calendar. And, we're now at A8C.
Mr. Mayor and Council, at 8C is City Attorney regarding discussion of proposed city charter amendments ballot initiatives. C1 is a motion providing direction to staff regarding a ballot measure for converting the city treasurer position from elected to appointed. At C2 is a motion providing direction to staff regarding proposed charter amendments.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, the item before you is a follow-up to some of the items that were previously requested by council for further discussion with respect to both the city treasurer position, converting that to an appointed position, as well as some of the items related to our fiscal administration and accounting, the accounting practices that are required in the charter as compared to accounting practices that are in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. In addition, we've got some additional information regarding some potential charter amendments related to the civil service process, including the bumping process. And with that, I'll turn it over to Ms. Varpetian to give the presentation.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council. My name is Lucy Varpetian, Senior Assistant City Attorney. We will go right into the PowerPoint. As Mr. Garcia stated, the current direction of the council, which came to us on March 27, 2012, was to place on the upcoming May 2013 ballot a measure that would convert the position of the treasurer from an elected position to an appointed position. And along with that, we were given direction to make that position an at-will position, to convert it upon the passage of the measure, and to submit the measure at the 2013 election. We've brought forth two general areas of where we think we'd like to allow you an opportunity to consider some additional changes, and there are along the lines of accounting and finance and the civil service. First, the accounting. It has to do with the fund structure compliance and with the requirements of generally accepted accounting practices. The charter currently has 10 funds identified, but they are outdated and out of compliance with GAAP. Examples of those are the Waterworks and Electric Works depreciation funds, Waterworks and Electrical Works revenue funds, sinking fund, surplus fund. The city's current practice, though, is to have 62 funds to account for all of the activities and operations of the city. These accounting practices require unnecessary record keeping, which cause confusion from a recording aspect, and modernizing the charter would reflect and incorporate the current standards that are required by GAAP. The second area that we've identified has to do with just general cleanup and fiscal administration. An example of that is the charter currently requires council to provide for petty cash funds for payment in cash of expenditures provided for the budget that cannot conveniently and economically be paid otherwise. That certainly is not a current practice. Petty cash payments are limited to small expenditures and are charged against budgeted line items. And a final item in this general category is the charter requires a public sale when issuing bonds. Amendment could allow for negotiated bond sales when appropriate and improve efficiency of bond financing. The next area is the civil service rules and the bumping rights. Here the charter requires bumping based on seniority across departments. And what that means is that if you have an employee who is more senior to someone in a particular job classification in another department, when you have layoffs, that individual could bump somebody in a different department. The amendment could allow Civil Service Commission authority to amend bumping requirements as necessary, eliminate bumping across departments to avoid the inefficiencies that could be created as a result of that. The next broad area for consideration is the rule of three. The charter currently requires that the appointing authority be given names of the top 3 candidates successfully completing an exam. There are certainly a number of other avenues by which to do that. amending the charter could allow for candidate ranking to be addressed through the civil service rules rather than having that in the charter. An example of that would be, for example, banding, and what that would mean that is individuals who are successful and fall into a particular band, all of those candidates would be directed to the appointing authority for selection. The next category is budgetary reallocation of a position. When council authorized the reallocation of a position, the charter required, let me back up. When council authorizes the reallocation of a position, the charter requires that Human Resources institute a competitive process to fill the position. This creates redundancy and confusion in the process, and to amend that would require a charter amendment. The last, again, just sort of this quick cleanup item, is that the charter requires Civil Service Commission to commence a proceeding to hear fully and determine the matter within 2 weeks of the filing of an appeal. Time-wise, this becomes very difficult. The proposed amendment would be to allow for a reasonable time within which for the Commission to hear, to commence and hear the matter. Each of the items that were identified under the Civil Service amendments would trigger a Myers-Brown Act meet and confer requirement. Because we don't know how long the process will take, this may potentially cause some delays in our timing in bringing the matter back to council. And council may also consider having the Civil Service Commission review each of these amendments and make suggestions as they see fit. As far as the next steps, currently the direction is to bring one item back during the municipal election of April 2013. The slide here identifies the benefits, the pros and cons of bringing it, including these during the municipal election versus a statewide election. If the items are on during a municipal election, that is certainly less costly to the city. It ranges somewhere between $26,000 to $47,000, and that is dependent on the number of amendments, whether or not additional ballot cards need to be added. County has quoted us a considerably greater price at $155,000, but we understand from our election consultant that that cost can vary, and usually their estimates are low. The other advantage to going through with the municipal election is that we can include a number of amendments, whereas with the county election, we are sharing space on the ballot with other municipalities, and the county may reject potentially some or all of our proposed amendments. The advantages of going through with the statewide election is that this certainly allows the city a lot more time to study the issues and consider other changes. So here are the options that are before the council now. We can certainly proceed with all of the amendments, move forward with bringing back completed resolutions in December that actually has the red line language for council to consider. Option 2 is to proceed with the item that has been approved in the past, which is the city treasurer amendment only. And the last item is to delay the process and direct staff to study further for either a municipal or a statewide election.
Question. Would each one of those amendments have to be on the ballot separately with a discussion on the pros and cons of each one?
If we can group them, to the extent that we can group them, we will, but a lot of these items would be handled individually because they are separate and distinct issues. We could certainly take them up as a whole, but if we do that, we run the risk of losing one, losing all of them if individuals oppose a single amendment.
And if I may add, Ms. Weaver, we are subject to limitations of the single subject rule, so which is in the state constitution, which basically says initiatives have to, or ballot measures have to pertain to one particular subject matter. So we'd have to look at what most likely the finance measures and the civil service measures, and then the treasurer should probably be treated separately for purposes of a particular ballot measure.
They can be grouped so that finance is grouped together.
My view, yes.
Yeah.
I mean, can a priority be set? Like, is that what you're saying?
Well,
the finance would be higher priority?
Well, however, the council wants to provide direction in terms of priority. I just meant in terms of you have a ballot measure number one, and it can only pertain to one particular subject matter.
Okay, so that could be the treasurer.
Correct.
Then we go to a second. Within a grouping, can you prioritize? I mean, is it all or none within a grouping?
Well, again, it's yes. I would say it's up to the council to provide direction how they want to group particular items.
No, but if an item, his question is, if an item is grouped together, then if it's voted down, then it's all of it is down.
That's correct.
But if we made 2 or 3 changes in the finance package and put them on the ballot alone, I mean, there's certain things I'm sure our city finance director would like to get done more importantly. Like maybe civil service isn't as important right now as the cleanup language on finances. So could we pull those out?
Yes, and I would note that, and Lucy mentioned this in her presentation, the finance items are pretty much getting the language and bringing it back to you. It's a pretty simple process. Because the civil service implicates meet and confer, we can't say for certain we'd be back in December with those. Whereas with the finance item and the treasurer item, we could bring those back if that is ultimately the council's direction.
So I was going to say that, saying the problem we've had with the wording regarding finances, it seems like I'd like to clean that one up the most. Don't have that thrown at us again.
I have a question for Mr. Doyle, actually. Starting with the bumping rights under the civil service rules, how would you streamline that situation? Authority to amend bumping as necessary, eliminate bumping across departments. How would that work?
Mr. Mayor, members of council, I think probably the easiest way to address that issue would be to only allow the bumping to occur within the department. The real problems, the real chaos that occurs when this process takes effect is when a position in one department gets laid off, and then you have somebody who may have a lot of experience or particular specialty in that department. That department's work ends up in another department doing something similar but somewhat different. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But the bottom line is that over time, people do develop areas of expertise, whether that be in engineering, whether that be in just general administrative work, and the bumping process across departmental lines is somewhat disruptive to the organization. So I think,
No, I understand.
Okay.
Next is the rule of 3, amending the rule of 3 instead of the top 3 candidates passing the exam. The appointing authority is given a name of all the candidates who score places them in a band. So how does that work?
Sir, Mr. Mayor, currently under the charter, we are limited to what's known as the rule of 3. That means once a recruitment process and the selection process is completed, we establish what's known as an eligibility list, and the names on that list then become eligible for the appointing authority to then hire. Right now, whether you have 5 people who pass the process and make it onto the list, or 7 or 8 or 9 or 10, that appointing authority is just limited to the top 3 names on that list. And it's a process that I would say has worked okay over the years, but it is somewhat inflexible. And if you find yourself in the situation where you interview these top 3 candidates, and the department then comes to the conclusion that none of these candidates are acceptable, they really have no alternative to deal with it other than to either not fill the position or make a selection of somebody that they perhaps wouldn't ordinarily select.
And with so much competition for any number of these positions, what we do see are a number of folks, more than 3 certainly, that are scoring very, very high. And there may very well be a natural break between those that are on a range of 100, 95 and above, and then the rest of them are in the low 80s. What we would say is, because so many of these jobs are really functions of how they fit, give those departments the opportunity to interview not just 3, but 5 or 6 or 7, whatever that natural break point is in scoring.
Well, and so the public understands the jobs themselves sometimes would require written examination in addition to manual dexterity depending on the job position, oral interviews in front of panels, etc. So that band would obviously be people that have been through a number, if you want to call them hoops, jumped through a number of hoops before they got to that position.
Sir, there are many steps in the process.
Question.
If you're a poor exam taker,
Yeah.
you've had it maybe.
Mr. Najarian.
With regard to the identification of the band or the identification of the threshold, when would you make that determination? After all the testing is done and you identify your group, or beforehand do you say anyone above 80 or above any particular score would be considered?
Mr. Mayor, Councilman Najarian, my recommendation would be to, again, work with the Civil Service Commission to define more specifics on that. But I firmly believe that you need to identify what the band would end up being, whether it's anyone who scores between 80 and 90, or 90 and 100, or maybe you want to separate it by 5 percentage points, depending on the examination process. My view for ultimate transparency is to lay that out up front, so it doesn't look like you're trying to manipulate the process afterwards and try to determine that after you've gotten your list. So that would be my recommendation, but there are a variety of ways of doing it. Some exams, when we do firefighter recruit, we're going to end up with all the people who pass that exam. We may end up with a list of 350 people, something like that. And in that context, we could have very narrow bands, whereas perhaps a department head type position where we end up with a very short list of qualified people, we may want to make them a little larger. So.
Any other questions from Mr. Doyle, Mr. Mnuchin?
Not from Mr. Doyle, actually. I want to talk about the financial issue.
I thought
Sir Elliott is sitting here prepared for all my questions.
I hope so.
Of course, I disagree with the report saying that it's not in compliance with GAP, the charter. But I want to ask whether these funds that are listed here does the charter identify the functions of these funds,
yes,
of these titles, or
yes,
does it just indicate the titles?
There's a specific section in Article 11 for each one of those funds, and describes generally what those funds are for. Typically, like the revenue fund is to collect for both water and electric, collect the revenue and account for the expenditures. In a sense, it's the income statement. Then we have the surplus fund, and the way it's described, in a sense, is the balance sheet. So those descriptions, in my view, are inconsistent. And if I had an enterprise fund, which is what the utility funds are, I would have, if I was setting it up fresh, I would have a water fund and an electric fund. I wouldn't have all these pieces. Now, why those were put in, I don't know originally. I guess somebody had their reasons. It just, relative to other municipalities that have their own operations, enterprise funds, we do it here ourselves with sewer and integrated waste. Those are standalone, single funds.
Does the charter give the leeway to add additional funds, since we do have 62 funds? So we must have some kind of leeway, otherwise only these funds would have been used.
Mr. Mayor, Councilman Mnuchin, from the hours that we have spent going through this, it's really silent what other funds outside of the general fund and these specific funds. But as you know, we have, I think, 37 special revenue funds, and by definition, in accounting, you have a general fund, and if you can't put something in the general fund, there has to be a reason for it. So an enterprise fund, which are self-supported, as are the internal service funds, are proprietary funds. All special revenue funds are mandated typically by the grantor of where we get the funds from. So Section 8 is a standalone fund. That's mandated by the federal government. We have to have specific accounting and reporting for those single funds. So it's silent on that, but that's why we have so many other funds in the different fund types.
But it must be allowed if it's silent on it and we're
Yes,
actually
it's allowed.
de facto doing it, then we can continue to do it without putting it on the charter, without having.
Yeah, and I think the goal here is just to, as Ms. Varpetian said, is really just say we're in compliance with generally accepted accounting principles in terms of how we address the finances of the city, and not get into we have to have this type fund or that type fund.
And I agree with that policy that the charter should not be specifying what kind of accounts you should have. But since it's already there, the question is whether we have to change the charter, whether we have to spend the money to change the charter for these simple items. That's the question in my mind.
I think we can add, as you point out, we can add different funds because it's silent to it, but we can't really take away those funds or eliminate that structure because that's called out very specifically.
And we choose not to use them, which we are doing at this point.
And that creates the conflict that we have today.
Well, and I think part of, as we've gone through this with individuals from the public on the charter requirements and how we account for things, it creates a lot of confusion. When we do the individual accounting and we keep these funds active to comply with the charter, although when we report, we have to combine them. So all the depreciation fund, the surplus fund, we combine them and collapse them into what you see in the annual financial report. You see the electric operation and the water operation, but there's a lot of those pieces below that we end up having to budget and track and transfer things back and forth. It just adds a lot of complexity to the process that I think is unneeded.
All right, I have two speaker cards, Mike Mohill, followed by Herbert Milano.
Good evening, Mayor Quintero, council members, fellow Glendalians. My name is Mike Mohill. I find this whole discussion very interesting. I think we're putting the cart in front of the horse, and we're mixing apples with oranges. Either we're talking about putting the treasurer's position as from being elected as it is right now by the people, or as some council members want to take control of the treasurer's job and make it appointed, just like we have with the city finance manager, city manager, city attorney. Why do the people want to have one of the few chances to control one of our senior people, have the city council control it? And then you go ahead and talk about civil service. If the guy is appointed, what's his rules and regulations and so forth? Why? If you want the people to vote on this issue, just say up or down. Instead, you make it complicated. Talking about bumping rights. What does bumping rights have to do with the treasurer's position? We talked about bumping rights in this thing here, okay, as an appointed position. Let's keep it to the treasurer's position. We want to be elected. As it is right now, we don't need it to be changed. If you're going to put anything on the ballot, why don't we put pension reform? That would be more logical, Mr. Weaver. I know you don't want to. I know you don't.
Bumping in the treasurer's office.
No discourse between.
But you like to. Why are we talking about bumping and civil service in this report? Why don't we just keep it to the treasurer? It should either be appointed like you want it to be, or elected by the people. And I hope the people, when they see this on the ballot, vote it down. We don't need to have any more control by the council members. Let the people have the opportunity to maintain control. We need the separation of power, the influence. Let the people run the city, not staff. Thank you. My name is Mike Mohill.
Mr. Mohill, you reminded me of the musical Evita in Argentina, the people. Mr. Mohill, the people.
Somebody has to speak for us.
What was the section you were mentioning?
Herbert Milano.
Article 11.
It says official advertising article. Article.
The charter?
Oh, no, never mind. Sorry.
Go ahead, Ms.
Buenas noches, Mayor Quintero, members of the City Council. I want to speak to the section that you're discussing now with regard to the charter wording concerning the accounts as it pertains to the Glendale Water and Power. As many of you know by now, the city's founding fathers did not have anything to do with the fact of the Glendale Water and Power funds being moved over or allowed the transfers. That occurred in 1942. I've actually went into the archives at the library, pulled out the information along with Mr. Zavos and read through it. And so my question is, what was the intent, given the wording of what you see in the city charter? And I spent a considerable amount of time with that document. And it appears to me as follows. It appears to me that the reason why those accounts were named in the charter is to make it clear that only a surplus after the expenses and after maintaining the utilities operations properly and after making allocations for capital improvement, that surplus fund that is maintained can be used. And it appears that the ordinance says it can be used only for the purpose of lending some money to the general fund while the general fund is expecting the funds coming in from property tax. Because property tax is delayed so much, probably until December or January, I don't know the exact date, the city needs the funding and needs the cash flow. So the objective was to say, let's take some of that money and make it available, and then it goes back into this fund. If the wording is going to be changed, for clarification, it should not change that intent. It should specify that the monies that are being pulled out of the Glendale Water and Power asset transfer should be for the purpose of patching up this general fund while the money goes back and remains as a reserve. That reserve is pretty important. And the terms of the reserves, I think, are pretty clear on the charter amendment. Now, obviously, you need some money to be able to patch up your general fund. And I know that the city attorney is going to try to protect, the status quo that you have currently. But I think that any reasonable person reading through this information would get the gist of this, which is a temporary allotment of those monies from the water and power over to the general fund. And I think that the intent of those concepts should remain. Thank you very much.
Okay. Comments?
Well, I have a concern regarding actually the financial issues where we're doing away with the Glendale Water and Power surplus fund as well. Is that what we're looking? Which discusses the issue of the transfers from water and power to the general fund, from the surplus funds, actually. And doing away with the 25% limit that is applied in the charter.
Whatever the specific is, if you want to ascribe a limit in the charter, that can be in there or not have it in there.
But you're proposing to do away with everything except for general fund and having any other funds that are required by operations be administratively created, basically. That's what the proposal is.
We're looking to create an electric fund and a water fund.
Not by charter.
Not by charter.
Not by charter, administratively.
Yes.
That is my issue, that we're doing away with some of the limits that are in the currently in the charter in terms of the transfers, although we're not at the limits, but who knows what's going to happen 10 years from now.
But as I say, if we were going to draft it all over again, we, recognizing the way that accounting is done, public accounting is done, would be to create an electric fund, a water fund, and then if we were going to discuss a general fund transfer, then if it was council's pleasure to say no more than X percent, we could include that in there too. The primary focus of what it is that we're looking to do is for once and for all eliminate the debate that's been had about where should that transfer come from based on the specificity and ironically enough being specific, having enough cloudiness in terms of having the ability to take operating revenue as it's defined and place that into this, and have it comprise the transfer. So why not just at this point say we're going to have an electric fund, a water fund, the city council may transfer up to X amount of, X percentage of revenues as defined, and not have the debate that we've had.
But my contention is that you are doing that administratively, not by charter. It's not.
Well,
are you proposing including it in the amendment?
If I may, it certainly could be that, and this is what other jurisdictions have, they have a water fund and electric fund in the charter, but they don't have all these separate funds within those funds, the surplus fund, the sinking fund, all the different funds that are part of that.
And that's what I'd like to see. I'd like to have it stay in the charter, but a separate electric and water fund.
And in terms of the wording that is currently in the charter, how would it be worded in terms of the transfers? Water funds, we know we can't do the transfers anyway, so it's really not relevant. But the electric transfers, how would it be worded in terms of whether the funds that would be transferred out of the surplus fund or the gross revenues?
I think we would have, and I'll refer to Bob, but I think
that is the contention currently, and I would like to know how we would propose that to the community at this point, what would we propose?
I think we would propose having an electric fund, having the council with the authority to transfer upon certain findings a percentage up to a certain cap, if that's the council's direction, from revenues as defined. And keep it literally as short and simple.
Gross revenues or net revenues?
Well, we would define it, so it's whatever you would want it to be. It could be either one, but the idea is that right now we're transferring about a little less than $21 million because the council reduced the transfer this current fiscal year. We are trying to develop a glide down, so we're transferring less. And I've said it before, and I know council has said it as well. The idea isn't transferring less because somehow there's something wrong with that transfer. It's transferring less to try to make us as absolutely competitive as possible. I think whenever we look at the charter, we want to look at the genius of our charter would be that it encapsulates what it is that what our values are, what it is that we're trying to accomplish, but isn't so specific that it absolutely ties our hands like it does even more vividly on the HR side. I mean, we can vest all kinds of different unique and detailed powers with the city council, through an administrative code. But the charter doesn't really change. That code changes with the different councils as they come through. That would be, I think, our goal, is to have a charter that is overarching and then a level of specificity that flows with the councils through the vested, I guess, in the municipal code as an administrative code. So that way you have, so that way you certainly have the confidence, the public has the confidence that no one is sitting here making it up as they go. It's written down, it's discussed, it's heard.
It won't be written down, it'll just be very simplified in terms of what's written down, and then the rest, it will be based on policy of the council.
Correct.
And the council at one point can decide that we will be transferring 50% of the revenues to the general fund.
Or 0%.
And there won't be any limits on it.
Sure.
That is the issue that I'm having a difficult time with.
But that door swings both ways, that you could, as a council, come back and say, we shall transfer nothing. And we will either cut $20 million from the general fund or put out a general fund tax and have that supplant one another. But at the end of the day, it's this board of directors for this municipal corporation that makes what the policy is.
And if I might add, again, our view has been that the method in which we account for these funds and the amount of the transfer complies with the charter, but there's a debate about that. And so the goal here was, when we brought to bring this back, was to eliminate any debate about our current practice complying with the charter, but keeping the substance of it in there, which allows for up to 25% to be transferred. And of course, if the council wanted the charter amendment to change, then they could provide direction to do that.
And truly, in terms of backstory, the council had previously made a decision on the treasurer. Now, if you want to still go forward with that decision, you can change that, go forward, whatever you would like. But as we went through the budget and as we went through the discussion on the general fund transfer, the direction from council was this general fund transfer issue continues to crop up, and it's going to continue to crop up forever. So why don't we try to fix it if indeed we're going to have a ballot measure on the treasurer? And then as we went through the budget and the reorganization, and we actually lived through a series of very significant layoffs, the size of which this organization hasn't seen in more than a generation, we realized there's a problem there too. We probably should fix that while we're here, because we're here and we're smarter for the experiences that we've had. So that's why we've bundled this as a series of decisions. So as the options exist, we can move forward with all three. We can push all three off. We can go forward with some. Again, it comes down to what the council's desire is.
The 25%, well, that isn't in any of this we have here tonight, is it?
It's Section 22, if I may.
Okay.
Again, I don't think we're proposing to do away with it from the charter.
All we're proposing to you is that these are areas that need to be cleaned up, and we would bring the GWP financial accounting.
I understand that,
Yeah.
but is there any place where it says we're going to change the 25% to 50 or to 0 or anything?
Not in this tonight, no. We would come back to you with language if council wants to go forward.
Well, that's not in what you presented tonight, though.
Correct.
If I can add, I think the goal of looking at all these, and we have talked about this ad nauseum, but I think the goal is to do a comprehensive review and offer an alternative to the language that we have now. We've talked about the specific funds. I would remove those and say, we have funds, to comply with generally accepted accounting principles. In terms of the transfer, that could state the council has the ability to transfer up to 25% as adopted in the budget process. That way we don't have to. Right now it says you have to transfer 25% unless you find for a lesser amount. So.
Is the easiest way for you, are you going to come back with the current charter and then strikeouts?
Right, absolutely.
Show the new wording?
Absolutely.
If you want to
Get
go
our
forward,
hands
yes.
around it?
If you want to go forward,
that's what we would
We'd have to do that. We'd have to bring that language to you. You'd have to approve it word for word.
But before
over the place.
before we go and do that and dedicate the time from the attorney's office in particular,
Do
and
we want
certainly
to do civil service and finance?
and before we go sit down and meet and confer in good faith with all of our bargaining groups, do we want to go that direction as well? So this is basically a release valve for the council. Do you want to have a charter election with one or some or all of the items that are on the screen now that are in play? Because if you do, then we can jump to work and bring that back to you. And if you don't, then we can pivot and go in a different direction.
All this started with treasurer position. Now we've added these things. At what point in time do you get the public going into the poll, looking at 10, 15 candidates for council, whatever else, and then a whole list of measures? What point in time do you turn them off, that you've given them too much?
Do you have any confidence in the people?
Well, sometimes.
But it sounds like it could be 3, right?
Mr. Najarian was next.
That's our thinking, yes.
As I see this discussion with regard to the different funds, it was through the discussion of Mr. Zavos highlighting the ambiguity and some of the confusion that exists between the funds as identified in the charter and our actual practice of putting money in those funds and transferring, that we all realized there was some confusion in this. By accepting this particular charter amendment, we would eliminate that confusion, so they couldn't say, well, it has to come out of the surplus fund and it pours over from the general fund into surplus, et cetera. It would be it would not be ambiguous. It would be a clear decision. It wouldn't affect the 25% issue, but it would certainly clear up as well, as Mr. Zavos has admitted, and as he explained it to us and the public for many, many meetings, there is much confusion as to how the charter is interpreted and the funds are administered with regard to the transfer. So this would probably clear that up, that ambiguity if passed. That's how I'm reading this in a short, because it was through his statements and his discussion that it really highlighted some of the outdated modes of naming these funds compared to the current practice under the GAP principles.
Well, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, Councilman Najarian, absolutely agree. Mr. Zavos brought this to everybody's attention. I have to say, however, from the day I walked in here and found this fund structure, I've been scratching my head thinking, why does Glendale do this? No other municipality has this type of structure for their electric and water operations. And I think the goal here is really just to make it more efficient, make it easier to report on to the public, and make it simple. And I think we can do that with a cleanup of the specific language in here.
Friedman.
I have a question because you went through the cost of these ballot measures sort of quickly. I know that there's a compounding cost, that the more ballot measures you have, the more expensive it is. But is it more expensive if you do 2 1 year and 1 the next? Sort of, do you get a cheaper rate if you do them all at once? Does it make a difference? I don't know if Artie knows or anybody else knows.
The primary cost comes in printing. It's really the publication of it. I can tell you, if my humble professional opinion of running elections, it's probably best to run this on a city election in sync with one that's going to take place anyways, because I'm sure you saw in the report that the cost of doing it with the county is significantly more, up to 3 times more. But in terms of the amount, it really depends on if you have so many items on a ballot that it requires a second card, ballot card to be printed.
So do we know, I guess thank you, that does help. But I'm wondering, does it make a difference if we did, I'm just throwing this out, if we did 1 now, 2 next time, all 3 now? Is it cheaper to do all 3 at once? Is it cheaper to spread them out so that, like you said, maybe it's a smaller ballot?
It's really difficult to say because we don't know how many candidates will be announcing for however many seats that are up for consideration. And we're looking at ways of simplifying the cards. We do 3 languages in addition to English for translation. We're looking to modify that using some direction from cities that have done so in compliance with the Department of Justice requirements in terms of having ballot cards that are 2 languages. It would be English, Armenian, English, Spanish, English, Korean, as opposed to having everything jumbled up on 1 card. But even with that cost savings, I think that this council should decide whatever they feel is the best approach. The overall cost is going to be somewhere, in the figures that were quoted. It won't really make that big of a difference. I suppose that'll answer your question.
Okay. I'm always looking to get a bargain, so.
As are we all nowadays. As are we all.
Mr. Manukian.
I would be in favor of cleaning up the fund titles and the functions of the funds and just listing general fund and basically stating that administratively we can create the funds as is needed for the operation of the city. However, the issue of the transfer, I would like it back in the charter somehow. And my approach would be to limit the transfer, put a limit on the council, actually, to the transfer again, from the surplus funds and not from the gross revenues. And that's how I would prefer approaching it, so that the operations of the electric utility will not be impacted by the transfer itself, where the transfer is after all the expenditures for the utilities for running it properly has been determined.
All right, well, I'll give my opinions, at least preliminary opinions, in terms of the financial charter amendments. Yeah, I think the general fund, have an electric water separate fund with transfer language in the charter, and have the voters approve it. As for whether it's gross revenues or that, I don't know. I haven't made up my mind. I don't think we have to make up our mind tonight. I'll think about that one. Both the general manager of Water and Power and the city manager have to look to see what works best for the entire city. But the idea of putting that on the ballot with the transfer language in it, I think that's a good idea. I also think the Civil Service Commission rules should be modified, starting with the bumping practices, although that's going to take a while. We obviously have to go to the employee associations to work with them on it, but I think that makes sense. And as well as the rule of three. I think it's somewhat archaic. Sometimes you may have 5 or 6 candidates that are all extremely competitive, and yet you're ruling out 2 and just going with 3. So I think that's also a good idea. Then on the city treasurer amendment, I'm for a professional manager, an investment person. You would have to have minimum degrees, minimum qualification in terms of degrees, and minimum qualifications in terms of financial investment experience, and specifically financial investment experience, someone who has done this type of work in the past. So you're not looking for a stockbroker, someone who actively trades or invests in stocks. You're looking at someone with experience in fixed securities, bonds, et cetera, commercial paper, et cetera. So those are my 3 opinions.
I stated my opinion regarding the financial issues, and of course, as it relates to the civil service procedures, these have been items that have come to the forefront over the many years, especially the rule of 3 and banding. And I've had many discussions with a number of employees and a number of individuals who were not considered for employment because of the rule of 3. So I think these are issues that do need to be addressed, and I will support putting them on the ballot as long as they're all in one segment and we don't have individual ones all over the place, because it will clutter the ballot and make people it'll make the ballot not very friendly. As far as the treasurer's position, I've made my position clear. This item started coming up after I ran for treasurer in 2009, and there are rumors that I'm running again next year, but that decision has not been made. And it's unfortunate that taxpayer funds are being used for personal vendettas, and I completely disagree with that, and that should not happen. If individuals are interested in having the treasurer an appointed position by the council, they should grab their clipboards and their signature sheets, go out and get the support from the community, spend their own money from their own pocket instead of the taxpayer money, and have it put on the ballot, and not have the taxpayer fund their personal issues. So that is my opinion.
Mr. Weaver.
I support all the changes that staff has suggested. I'm looking for the strikeout version so I can see what it is now and what you're going to. For me, it'll be a lot easier to to comment on it when I see the strikeouts and the changes. Of course, I support the appointment of a treasurer. Think of the wild case out there. Anybody in this city who's a registered voter could run for city treasurer. That person, male or female, got the most votes, would walk in a door and all by themselves be investing $500 million. I'm not really, as a resident here, willing to risk somebody winning on a personality contest. We have appointed Brown Baruki. I think we appointed Betty Evans back, and they both did a good job, and they were appointed. So that's my take on all three. I'd like to see the strikeout versions come back. That'd be very important.
Well, this, by the way, the idea of appointment, this would not be a city, the way I envision it would be up to the city manager to interview and appoint the person, not the city council.
And then we would ratify, just like we do the other departments?
I guess I'll go next. I'm in favor of the charter cleanups. I think they're necessary. The civil service, the issue surrounding the funds. I would support condensing them as much as you need to legally, as much as you're able to legally. I think that, separating them sort of under general headings sounds like it's going to be the way that it has to go, sort of civil service funds, however you want to call them. As far as the treasurer, I think enough people over the years have wanted this to come on the ballot that my feeling is just to let the people decide and let's be done with this once and for all. Let the people, it's democracy, let the people vote on it. I think there's arguments both ways. I know there are cities that have appointed treasurers and there are cities that have elected treasurers. Let's get the League of Women Voters to come in and bring in some experts. And I'd be interested to hear what the pros and cons are of both so that I can make up my mind. And so I'm fine with putting that on the ballot as well. In terms of timing, though, I know that you have meet and confer issues with civil service, and you may have other issues in terms of language with the other charter issue. I don't feel that any of those are so pressing that you have to rush them onto this ballot. It would be great if they could be on this ballot, but if it's difficult or it becomes contentious with the employees, and you think that more time would help, I think that's fine as well, as long as it's a city election, though, so that we keep the cost down.
I think the financial amendments, I think, are going to be pretty easy to put together. I don't think that'll take very long, but obviously the civil service is a different story. Mr. Najarian.
I'm not in favor of changing the way the treasurer is elected. With regard to the accounting practices, Mr. Mayor, did you say you want to put the issue of the transfer before the public?
No, the fact that the 25% would remain in the charter.
Oh, okay.
It's currently.
Are we going to let them vote on that?
Well,
in other words, we can just discuss the funds, the way the funds are named, right. Or we can talk about, we could ask for a ratification of the 25%.
No, just all part of the general language that
okay.
It brings up to date the financial.
Just for clarification, when we bring back the language, it'll probably include amendments to the sections that deal with the transfer, but we wouldn't, if the direction is don't change that calculation, that would come back as is.
Okay.
And then if the voters vote it down, then the current language would just stay.
Still have that ambiguity.
Correct.
I'm in favor of that. I'm in favor of the civil service issues, the bumping rights, the banding, the bond negotiation, budgetary reallocation. It's a bit about paying cash if you can.
That was just used as an example in the report, the payment of petty cash.
It's kind of weird,
yeah.
Right? I mean,
there's several of those.
Cash is legal tender, so how could someone not accept cash?
Well, I think after some of our discussions, and this is one of those things, I don't know why it's in there. I suspect there was a lot of payments made in cash way back when, so there was probably a lot higher volume of cash where they actually were paying it out. But we don't use a lot. we don't use a lot of cash nowadays. I mean, we do have some petty cash boxes.
I mean, as opposed to a check or a...
Doesn't
As
the
a-
council have a petty cash account or something?
I haven't found it.
There are petty cash accounts around the city for different expenses that people have, but by and large, we don't use a lot of cash.
So will this come before us again for a final
Yes.
say
yes.
once
Yes,
see
'cause
the
we have,
actual
to, we have to bring the language and the ballot measure language
All right,
back
well,
to you.
I won't chat too much longer.
So it doesn't really require a vote, I think.
Yeah, we actually would need a vote. On the treasure item, it sounds like, again, the prior direction stands unless it's the council gives a different direction, and it sounds like the majority of you wanted to keep with the current direction, which is to bring that back for the language for the April election. And I just, Mr. Najarian mentioned some of the other items that weren't discussed in detail, such as the streamlining of the negotiation for bond sales, and I just want to make sure that the council is okay with those items as well.
Yeah.
And so we'll bring all those items back with the caveat that obviously the civil service language may take a little bit longer, and then on the finance side, we'll have to bring it back to you soon enough so that you can debate the language, and there might even be changes that have to happen after the initial review of the language.
Can we just give you direction, give staff direction?
I'd like a
tonight?
motion, yeah, but I would like a motion to provide us direction. So a motion would be at 8C2, and it would actually would include all the items that are on the
Move that.
on the item, except for the last one. You would be providing us direction to bring it back so that we could place the measures on the ballot for the April 2013 election.
Well, should we take the treasurer
Yeah,
question
we'll take that
separately?
separately.
Well, okay.
That
And
way-
again, the treasurer question is, you've already decided to bring it back, so unless you want to change that, you don't need to make any more, you don't need to make a motion.
Well, I just want to make sure that those who are opposed to the treasurer being on the ballot, they can still vote yes on the rest, because I think it sends a message that we're unified
Correct.
in
And
our
so
support of the others.
the motion at 8C1 dealt with the treasurer. So if you don't want to deal with that, then no motion is needed for 8C1. 8C2 deals with both the finance and the civil service items.
I'll move 8C2.
Second.
Y'all agree on that?
Roll call.
Council members Friedman,
Yes.
Manukian,
This is a motion providing direction to bring it back, right?
To bring back the language to
Yes.
We got to see the strikeouts.
Najarian,
Yes.
Weaver,
Aye.
Mayor Quintero.
Yes. Okay, on the city treasurer, does someone have a motion?
I'll move.
That's
Again,
already
the
moved.
prior motion stands, which was to bring it back for, as outlined in the presentation.
All right. Moving on, what's next?
Next is oral communication. This is the 5-minute portion. Discussion is limited time, is not part of this agenda. Each speaker is allowed 5 minutes. Council may question or respond to the speaker, but there will be no debate or decision, and the city manager may refer the matter to the appropriate department for investigation and report.
Frank, can I make a comment first?
Yes, Ms. Friedman.
I just have a very quick comment, which is that I know that we have a lot of people here, or some people here, to speak on the smoking issue. And first, I want to thank you all for sticking around with us. And secondly, I know some of you came from other cities outside of Glendale, City of Los Angeles. So first, welcome. Thank you for coming. You are always welcome here. But I just want to clarify, because if you came from outside of Glendale, you might not have actually seen our council meeting from last week. So I want to clarify that the change in ordinance, so I asked staff today, how many restaurants do you think this change affects? Because I think there's a notion that there's lots and lots of restaurants that are going to be affected by this. They only could think of 2 restaurants in the entire city of Glendale out of hundreds and hundreds of restaurants, only 2 that could take advantage of the change in ordinance. That doesn't mean there may not be another one out there that they didn't think of. It doesn't mean that there may not be ones in the future. But in terms of right now, we're talking about 2 establishments. So I just want to make that very clear. The other thing I want to make clear, in case you weren't here at the beginning or not paying attention, although I know you were all paying attention because I watched you all meeting, but we are going to discuss, we're going to agendize, hopefully for sooner rather than later, increasing the buffer area between smoking and non-smoking. I don't know whether that discussion is going to be in all restaurants or only in the larger restaurants, but that discussion will come back. So that's something that's germane you may want to comment tonight on as well. Okay. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
All right. Mason Fong, followed by Michael Olivares. Mason had to leave. Michael Olivares, followed by Jacqueline Hernandez.
And please state your name for the record. Thank you.
My name is Michael Olivares, and hello, buenas noches, brevzes. I grew up in Glendale, and I went to Art Center just over the hill there, and I just recently had a baby at Glendale Adventist Medical Center. Now I also work for Glendale Adventist Medical Center, and I represent our hospital community as I speak to you this evening. I know Laura Friedman just spoke with the issue. I look forward to speaking about it again in the future. But we go up and down Brand, and we see a lot of smoking in the restaurants. So even if 2 are only affected, I am now also speaking as a father. It definitely, I have to keep my eye out as it affects our new family as well. So I need to come and speak to you guys tonight as well. Our hospital is proud to be an active partner in ensuring the overall health of Glendale. As you may know, we are also one of the largest employers and philanthropic organizations in the city. Like many, I was not aware of the ordinance relating to smoking in outdoor areas was going to be changed and adopted last City Council meeting, but we did, though, watch the video. So we are watching that, and I'd first like to encourage the City Council to think of established protocol and best practices, that is, after changing an ordinance being discussed, that it be agendized for a second reading. I kind of missed why that wasn't the case. This would be a more balanced approach and would allow you to get proper bearing after hearing from those affected parties. The hospital and the public are watching. Lastly, I'd like to speak to what one of the City Council members stated last City Council meeting, that we do not legislate on a morality issue. I think it was Mr. Manukian that said that. Smoking is, in our opinion, is not a morality issue. It was not? Okay, well...
Listen to Jerry.
Ms. Friedman.
I'm sorry. Okay. Well, on the video, someone said that in the City Council, and I just want to clarify that to us it's not a morality issue, it's a public health issue. And, you know, you have drinking alcohol and urinating in public that is legislated against as public health issues as well. The big difference here is that secondhand smoke is a known and proven to cause seriously harm to everyone around it. It's known to eventually lead to death, and not just to the user, but, like I said, everyone that comes in contact that is around the user. And I see that in our hospital with younger and younger people getting ill with COPD and with cancer. And unfortunately, all this disease and death also cost the city and the county millions. In LA County, it's $4.25 billion with a B every year. Now, I know some businesses and business owners are probably talking to you guys about how it will affect their business, if the smoking issue. If it's allowed, then it will hurt their business. But you know, if you think about those billions of dollars and you think of the cost of the city, and you also think of the lives and the health of the citizens, it's also very important to think of that as well. Now, to us, it's a very simple decision. Allowing more smoking, you'll see more costs and more harm, so it's a lose-lose situation. And contrarily, you know, if you protect people from smoking, you're going to see that win-win situation. I like to point to the invocation earlier today. The pilot had a lot of courage. I want to encourage you to have that courage to make the right decision. Also, Mr. Manukian earlier said that health is one of the most important things. I want to thank you for that and point to that, and hope that when you bring it back, you'll keep these things in mind and let us know so that we could come back and help you inform your decision. Thank you very much for the time.
Thank you. Jacqueline Hernandez, followed by Esther Schiller. Jacqueline Hernandez. She had to leave.
Plan their evenings.
Right. So let me make clear that the portion of oral communications, as you saw, is for presentations, and then now have 5 minutes to speak.
You.
Esther Schiller, and then Roy Russell.
Good evening, Mayor Quintero and members of the City Council. My name is Esther Schiller. I'm Director of SAFE, which stands for Smoke Free Air for Everyone. We're funded partly by the LA County Department of Public Health to provide information to policymakers and community members about secondhand smoke. Perhaps you can remember a time in California when smoking was permitted inside restaurants. In those days, it was not unusual to see parents and their children sitting in the smoking permitted section of the restaurant. That was years ago. and perhaps they were simply not aware of the harm they were causing to their children by exposing them to tobacco smoke. The new ordinance, which increases the areas for smoking on restaurant patios, has the potential for history to repeat itself, with parents sitting with their children in the smoking permitted section of the patio. That's very sad. Tobacco smoke is dangerous even outside, and despite all the education from state and county health departments and organizations like ours, there are still some parents who don't know that tobacco smoke will harm their children. With regard to the ordinance, the latest information that I have is that the council voted to adopt an ordinance that allows smoking in outdoor dining areas 25% when the area is less than 2,000 square feet. That sounds like it includes a lot of restaurants. 50% when the outdoor area is 2,000 to less than 5,000 square feet, and 66% when the area is 5,000 square feet or more. People with chronic illnesses will need to avoid these restaurant patios where smoking is allowed because smoke drifts. As a person with lung disease and COPD, I can attest to that fact. In addition, the wait staff of these smoking permitted areas will be exposed on a daily or nightly basis, so there will be potential for illness among the wait staff and filing of workers' compensation claims, which can be very expensive. It's also possible that the smoke will drift into the restaurant itself and be recirculated by the air conditioning system. And also, as I understand the ordinance, at this time, there is no buffer zone between the smoking and the non-smoking sections. 10 feet? Okay. I'm glad that you're going to revisit that. The percentage of Glendale residents who smoke, according to the LA County Department of Public Health, is 15.4%. According to the American Lung Association, most people who smoke want to quit. That's 70% want to quit. And smoke-free environments help people to quit. When smoking is allowed in public spaces, it's a trigger, it's a reminder that people who are addicted to tobacco want to start smoking again. Most people understand that smoking causes disease and death and is very expensive. The cost of smoking to a 24-year-old woman is $86,000 over a lifetime, and to a 24-year-old man, the cost is $183,000 over a lifetime. A pack of cigarettes should really cost $40 because that's what the cost is to the community. According to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, smoking costs the nation $96 billion a year in direct health care costs and an additional $97 billion a year in lost productivity. When people don't have medical insurance, the health care costs are borne by all of us. Basically, we're all in this together, and we should be trying to help people stop. Reducing the opportunities to smoke will help people quit, will protect children, will enable people with chronic illnesses to freely access restaurant patios. Since 2008, Glendale has led the way in promoting community health. It's very disappointing to see the city go backwards. Thank you.
Thank you, Roy Russell, followed by Harvey Pearson.
Mayor Jacqueline Hernandez from the American Cancer Society and Yulisa Gomez from the American Lung Association had to leave. So, my name is Roy Russell. I am the Vice Chair of the Coalition for Tobacco-Free Los Angeles County. And I would like I know you're being educated in these issues, but I'd like just to refresh your mind quickly. See this stick right here? The 70 killing chemical in this stick right here. Some of them are acetone, a paint stripper, arsenic, a poison-using insecticide, benzene, a cleaning product, carbon monoxide, cyanide. I remember as a prisoner of war in Vietnam, I was given a little capsule of cyanide for me if I wanted to commit suicide because I couldn't put up with torture. I escaped within 9 months. I didn't use the cyanide. Don't worry, it's right here. All of these things, including lead and vinyl chloride, formaldehyde that is used to embalm dead bodies, all this is on secondhand smoke. If you have walked into these chambers tonight and the air has been filled with pesticides and poison chemicals, will you have taken a deep breath? Of course not. But that's exactly what we are doing. Every time someone takes a puff on this stick right here, or somebody exposes you to secondhand smoke. Secondhand smoke, as you have already been shown, is one of the most dangerous classes of cancer-causing agents. Up to a week ago, Glendale was a state and national role model city in its effort for tobacco control. But today, over an issue that is circus-like with an amendment borderline on the ridiculous, no disrespect to anyone, 3 of you have sold your community to private retail interests.
Listen, sir, you can say whatever you want, but tone it down or a little loud.
I am usually.
Okay, step away from the mic a little
The
bit.
reason I allow and I share it with you is because I'm deaf in both of my ears. So I don't know.
Okay,
I
sorry, I
apologize.
didn't know.
But thank you for reminding me. Sometimes I need that. 3 of you have sold your community to private retail interests and restaurant owners who mistakenly think that they are going to profit when in reality it's totally the opposite. Every day, but primarily Friday and Saturday nights, residents and visitors are in every restaurant enjoying the amazing reality of a meal without being exposed to secondhand smoke right here in the city of Glendale. I have met people in Glendale from Sierra Madre, Beverly Hills, Palos Verdes, Claremont, San Diego, San Francisco, and other states and other countries who are coming to Glendale and specifically I find out that how they feel about smoke-free dining areas. I'm not making this up. That is one powerful reason that attracts so many families, amazing people who love this health-minded, amazing city. But with the smoke, misguided words that you are going to change that, then you better start welcoming the Mongols and the Hells Angels. An honor student who is an A-plus student decides to experiment with drugs. I can guarantee you that student will be an F student not too far from that time when he started. I see that happen to Glendale. You're an A-plus city. All of a sudden you want to bring smoke back in? That slowly will bring you and become the F kind of a city. Every time I come to Glendale, I have so many restaurants. Let me correct you about the 2 restaurants. There's more than that, I assure you. And next time I will bring you some names. My favorite restaurants, Portos, Mamitas, Lola's, Acapulco, Octopus, Sushi, Salo Salo. When I come into Glendale, I see the signs everywhere. Let me quote what the sign says. Glendale, breathe fresh air. No smoking in public places is the law. It's almost like reading, you are in paradise. Welcome to paradise. It's amazing. You have taken, if Neil Armstrong took a giant leap for mankind in the moon, the leap that you have taken prior to last week was much bigger on behalf of mankind because you are literally saving lives. Secondhand smoke doesn't respect boundaries. Even from a 25% smoking area, secondhand smoke drifts and will affect 100% of the patrons. Secondhand smoke doesn't come in. When it drifts, it doesn't come and stop in a line and say, whoops, I'm infringing on the non-smokers area.
Can I ask a quick question of the speaker? I just have a quick question because I want to be sure we're all on the same page
Yes,
here,
ma'am.
and I don't think we are. Do you think that before this change last week that we didn't allow smoking in outdoor areas in restaurants?
That you allow smoking in outdoor areas? No, you didn't.
No, we did.
You did.
25%.
45%?
That's where this confusion, 25%. Before this change, it was 25%. That's where this confusion's coming in. The ordinance does not change that. It's been 25%, right, of an outdoor area until last week. It's always been 25%. It has not been smoke-free. I want to make sure people understand that. I don't know why they're shaking their head. Is that what the ordinance has said, Mr.
Okay.
Regani?
Thank you very much for your time.
I will get back to you. Harvey Pearson, followed by Mike Mohill.
Mayor, City Council, Harvey Pearson, Los Feliz. I don't have the booming voice anymore. The gentleman just before me, because I had to smoke secondhand smoke in my apartment for way too many years. It's left me with a respiratory problem. It gets really bad. You wouldn't see me here like every winter it gets really bad, and then it's so bad I can't do much of anything. But so I would be more specifically address my remarks about the pending apartment ordinance, or multi-unit residential ordinance, that is, and commend the council that I understand is going to be brought back, and the sooner the better, I would have to say, because I'm thinking of this lady that was here 2 weeks ago, I guess. She was practically in tears. Well, I think she was in tears, talking about how she had to put a gas mask on, and what's going to happen to her. So I can identify with what she felt. It's total anguish when you're getting it so bad. There's nothing that can be done about it. And I was thinking maybe it has to come in through an agenda or something, but maybe it could be sooner even than the ordinance, that it could be current ordinance that's being discussed, proposed, be declared a nuisance in apartments. If you're in your unit inside a multi-unit residence and you're getting secondhand smoke, that would be considered a nuisance, and let the tenants be able to do something about it sooner rather than later. Thank you.
Thank you. Marlene Gomez, followed by Julissa Gomez.
Lisa went home.
Okay.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor Quintero and members of the City Council. My name is Marlene Gomez, and I am the chair of the Coalition for a Tobacco-Free Los Angeles County. Over 50 community and health organizations are members of the Coalition. The mission of the Coalition is to empower and mobilize communities and promote health by reducing and eliminating tobacco-related disease and death throughout Los Angeles County. And I guess before I go into my speech, our understanding of the previous ordinance was that the 25% was only in outdoor patios of 5,000 square feet or more. So if that can be clarified after I'm done, that would be wonderful. We were unable to attend your meeting on October 2nd, but we have been informed that the council held a first reading of an ordinance which will increase areas of smoking on restaurant patios. This seems like a huge step backwards. According to the California Air Resources Board, which regulates pollutants in outdoor air, tobacco smoke outdoors is a toxic air contaminant with no safe level of exposure, able to cause illness and death, as dangerous as the worst industrial air contaminants. When Glendale passed its outdoor ordinance in 2008, it was an amazing and wonderful moment. Very few cities in Los Angeles County, in fact only Calabasas, had taken the step of regulating smoking in outdoor public areas at that time. Since then, at least 9 other cities in Los Angeles County and 48 cities statewide have enacted ordinances requiring no smoking on restaurant patios, including the city of Los Angeles. Your previous ordinance established a buffer zone between the smoking and the non-smoking section. And although the buffer zone sounds good on paper, the reality is any amount of smoking on even a large restaurant patio will be detrimental because smoke blows on the prevailing winds. Even worse, setting up an area for smoking even with a buffer zone seems to indicate that the city believes and endorses smoking and is an acceptable activity in public spaces. You made great strides with the original ordinance, and going backwards now is as if you're denying good health to your residents and visitors. We look forward to coming back when this issue is revisited. Thank you.
Thank you. Mike Mohill, followed by Herbert Milano.
Good evening, council members. My name is Mike Mohill. A couple of weeks ago, when I appeared before this council, I said the following: that I lived in Glendale for 58 years and presently reside in Glen Oaks Canyon for the past 35 years. I also stated that I do not like to single out any one council member, but Councilwoman Laura Freeman, in a few short years, had helped change the face of Glendale by approving every apartment, condo, and hotel development before her, including the corrupt public housing company, ADI. A partial list of apartments, condos, lofts, and hotels she and her colleagues approved with minimum parking provided included the following: Broadway lofts, 208 lofts on Broadway. Courtyard by Marriott Hotel, 173 units on Central. Lemley Theater, 42 artist live-work lofts on Wilson. Verdugo Gardens, 220 units on Central. Legendary Towers, 72 condos, 8 live-work units on Central. Lex on Orange, 307 units on Lexington. Kenwood Terrace, 35 units on Kenwood Terrace. Casa California, 11 units on California. Colorado Gardens, 50 units on Colorado Boulevard. Wilson Avenue and Brand Boulevard, 235 units. Camden, USA, 287 apartments, including an additional 22 low-income units located in South Glendale across from the Glendale Memorial Hospital. Mrs. Friedman told the public that state law allowed more units if a developer builds more low-income housing. But Councilman Najarian and Manukian both said no to the state law. Why didn't Councilwoman Friedman say no? Again, was it all about the money? One public speaker asked why was all the low-cost housing being dumped, I'm going to use her word, dumped, into her neighborhood and not into the neighborhoods of the council members who had approved these units. Did council members take into consideration all the other multiple housing and mixed-use projects already approved approved prior to Mrs. Freeman's 2009 election and the impact these units would have on our future infrastructure? Roads, water, sewer, and electricity. A partial list of prior approved projects included the following: 416 on Broadway, 115 units. Embassy units, suites, 272 rooms on Central. Broadway and Louise, 34 units. Dorn and Isabel, 16 units on Dorn Street. Vassar City Lights, 70 units on San Fernando Road. Habitat for Humanity, 5 townhouses on Geneva Street. Veterans Village, 44 units on West Salem Street. Dorn Gardens, 37 units on West Dorn. And finally, Alliance Development, 179 units, 8 patio-style lofts, 14 three-story townhouses, Colorado, and the 5 freeway. About 2,442 apartments, condos, lofts, townhouses, and hotels are here and plan to be online over the next 5 years, and using the control factor of 2.5 residents per unit, that will mean approximately 6,105 new residents and their guests and their motor vehicles. The Jewel City traffic congestion already exists on Colorado Boulevard and other streets, but the on and off ramps of the 134 freeway, Brand Central, and Glendale Avenue will have to have greater and greater a nightmare with rush hour traffic. The freeway overpass will have to be enlarged. One should now start planning to take one's bicycle everywhere. Our city council and council members have told the public what's done is done. Will they let the next council fix our infrastructure mess? Is this the new normal, city councilman and city manager? However, in reality, council members were the ones who made the bad decisions, and now they are acting as if they are not responsible for the city problems. Thank you. My name is Mike Mohill.
Robert Milano.
Mayor Quintero, members of the City Council and staff, my name is Herbert Molano. I would like to address issues concerning the Glendale Water and Power and some of the proposals before the GWP Commission and before you. I believe that you have or will have coming before you a proposed bond issue of $35 million as an additional debt in order to maintain the infrastructure of the water utility. Several years ago, in 2007, a presentation was made before the City Council by Mr. Cavunas indicating $320 million of water infrastructure in arrears. And yet, the city continued to transfer money from the water utility over to the general fund. And we now know that the reason and the primary driver of the deficit of the general fund is the pension obligation. So I'd like to address the following things. I believe that the residents and the stakeholders should know how much has the debt per family increased since the year 2000. I use data from page 7 of the combined balance sheet of the year 2000. It's available on the web. And it appears, if I read this correctly, that we have gone from roughly $1,600 in debt per family to $5,600 roughly today. Might be even higher than that if we consider some of the other long-term liabilities. But maybe the city finance director can actually give you a more accurate picture. What is the debt per family today, and what will it be when you add this particular proposal? Everyone is concerned throughout the nation and throughout California concerning the increased government debt. And we are being forced to increase that debt in order to be able to sustain the utility in a way that it maintains its infrastructure. Now, the other issue I have is concerning the electrical rate structure. I have before me two bills of electricity, one from the Glendale Water and Power and the other one from the City of LA. Take a calculation here based upon the usual charges: customer charge, fuel charge, public benefit charge, the energy charge, and the city utility users tax. And I compare that to what I get in the City of LA. I get, for this very low usage that I had, basically just 22 days here, a 25.5 cents per kilowatt hour. For the City of LA, 14.5 cents per kilowatt hour. And the reason why it is that way is because it's a regressive structure. The less you use, the more your rate is, because you have overloaded the fixed cost. So even if you use zero electricity, you wind up with a payment anyway. And it is my contention that if you really want to promote conservation, you change the structure. The reason I've been given is that there are usually a certain number of transition and residents or dwellings that pay no or don't have any usage. But what if it is 5%? You can still take the remaining 95% and basically apply those costs and come with a single figure that you could apply. It's the same thing when you go buy gasoline. You buy a gallon, you pay 1 rate per gallon. If you buy 50 gallons, you pay the same rate. Why can't we do the same thing such that we set up a process by which those individuals who conserve, who have perhaps less money, who need to be able to watch their budget, are able to pay a lower rate than individuals who use a significant and larger amount of electricity. And it is to that extent that I'd like to also propose a new bill that will be more transparent. Today, that $21 million that is transferred from the electrical utility to the general fund is embedded as if it were an operational cost, and we know it's not, because that money goes to the general fund. So it's a tax. If monies do not apply directly to the operations of it, it's a tax. And California Constitution says it's a tax, and you're in violation of Prop 26. So it is my suggestion that you remove the amount of the transfer from the operational side of the bill and state it separately. Call it transfer in lieu of tax, or call it a tax, but it is a tax. You still have your 7% utility users tax, and you have this $21 million that goes to support the general fund or to prevent or allow you to support its shortfall. Those are my suggestions. I hope you bring it up before the City Council in the future.
Okay, any comments? I have a question, actually. In this handout, it says municipalities in California that prohibit smoking in all outdoor dining areas. Here in LA County, it's Beverly Hills, Calabasas, Malibu, Pasadena, Santa Monica, Sierra Madre, South Pass, but it also includes the City of LA. Does the City of LA ban smoking in all outdoor
Mr. Mayor, I'm not sure, but we can look into.
I was there Saturday night, and they were certainly smoking in the restaurant I was in, outdoors.
If I may, what the city of LA adopts in practice usually is different, but because I am a city of LA resident, I know that. But if I may, there was a clarification that I needed to make because a couple of the speakers seemed to be under the impression that prior to last week, we did not permit smoking in outdoor dining areas. In fact, the fresh air ordinance from the get-go allowed up to 25% of the outdoor dining area to be dedicated to smoking. The only change that the council made last week was to, based on two other thresholds, you increased that a little bit beyond the 25%. But we have at least always allowed up to 25% of the outdoor dining area to be used for smoking.
But do you know whether, in fact, there is an ordinance banning outdoor smoking in L.A. City?
I don't know, but I can find out.
I'd like to find out.
Well, let's not stop at LA City. Let's just look to our neighbor of Pasadena, whose name apparently is listed here.
Right.
I can name several restaurants, and they're practically indoor, where extensive hookah smoking is permitted. Eden Gardens on Holly Street, unless they have a special zoning code which permits hookah bars, which the speaker does not address. But what I would appreciate, however, is those anti-smoking advocates who come and criticize the Glendale law. Number one, please become familiar with the city of Glendale. Number two, be familiar with the current state of the ordinance and the exact nature of the changes we made.
Okay, anything else?
I'd like to,
Am I supposed to read this?
No.
No, the resolution? Okay.
like to move we adjourn.
Second.
We are adjourned.